Welcome to Project Teachers Lounge. Dr. Meredith Davis, I know her from Rhodes College. She was the Associate Dean of Students my senior year at Rhodes. Which put her in charge of multicultural organizations, which means we somehow work together. If not on a formal project, I spent a lot of time in her office bugging her. Um, and so she is now, since then, she has gone on to get her PhD in what is the
Women's and Gender Studies.
Women's and Gender Studies, and has become the Associate Vice President of Student Experiences at a big university in New York. So she's gone on to bigger and better things. So how have you been?
I've been wonderful. It's great to see you.
Uh, and thank you for doing this interview because I know it's super short notice, and I was like, I really want that admin perspective at a college. I think that's super interesting during this pandemic time. So let's talk about first how you got into education. You've been teaching, you've been in education for a while. How did you get into education?
So I've been in education for about 25 years, and I went to a small liberal arts college like you in Maryland. I'm from Baltimore, and being there, I was a first gen low income student. I had just lost my father, so I had a lot of rebellion in me. I was suspended my first semester of my first year. I got academically dismissed. I didn't know where I was going to sleep at times. But student activities and student life really gathered around me, supported me. And when they didn't understand me, they just still tried to help me the best they could possible. And I still have long lasting relationships with those people. So I think it's a pay forward type of ethos that I've acquired when it comes to education. So I've always wanted to be an educator. And let me also say that as an administrator, I believe I'm an educator with the gift of administration. So I think that's very different than being an administrator.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I completely agree with the student affairs in particular usually have a really big impact if you make those connections with students and students make connections with you. I can definitely say at Rhodes, obviously I was there 3 years before you came on. People in student affairs definitely are the reason why I stayed at Rhodes. There were times I was like, I'm about to see y'all later. It's time for me to go.
Yeah.
But making those connections and the programs that y'all put on to keep students engaged and build communities definitely help students stay committed to staying at school and providing those resources that are needed when students kind of like might be falling through the cracks and like, let me close that gap for you. You need to stay up in here. Um, so this year at your school, have y'all been virtual? Have y'all been hybrid? Have y'all been completely in person? What's the process for y'all?
So it was a combination, but predominantly we had students living on campus. We had a decent population, about 80 to 85% of our students returned. So we did have students living on campus. We also have a large population of students that live in the surrounding city. And we also had students that were remote as far as China. So we had students from all over the world that were still taking classes from undergrad to graduate programs like the law school, and it was definitely an interesting experience. I acquired a lot of new skill sets, and I think our institution did a very, very good job with testing, with protocols, with helping students still find ways to engage and make it as much of an experience as possible.
Got you. I'm gonna get into the protocols in a second. But first, just thinking about your position, what programs and student activities do you oversee from your position?
Sure. So there's 7 areas that report to me. We have the Center for International Services, we have Fraternity and Sorority Affairs, we have student activities, we have 2 student unions that are under my portfolio. We have the Office of Multicultural Affairs, we have the LGBTQ Resource Center, and we have the um, Disability Cultural Center as well.
Okay, and so what was the process of putting in protocols to make sure all those are still up and running, or maybe stopping some of those from running? Like, what happened with those?
So everything was up and running, and we had to go to virtual for a lot of our experiences for students, but we tried as much as possible to have programs in person. So we launched a new program that was for first gen students, and some of their events were in person and some of them were virtual, and they had the opportunity to have kind of like a closing ceremony at the end of the semester that was in person, that celebrated them, welcomed them to campus. And I think, and I hope it made a really positive difference in their lives, and that they'll continue to persist in this program. So the program still happened. We just had to a lot of times make the adjustments. There were moments where we put together programs in person, and then we got word from our county health department that we had to, downsize in density. There were times we had to go remote because we had numbers and cases that increased, and so to stay safe, everybody went remote. So it was a lot of switching and making really quick adjustments.
Nice. And you mentioned first year students, and from my experience working at a college-ish, and just being in school, that's like the group that you have to worry about retention wise for first year students. What were y'all doing to keep those students like engaged? And they just came off a semester where they most likely weren't in school, so they kind of want to get to school and probably want to do a little more than they were doing a semester ago. How were y'all able to keep them safe but also keep them engaged?
So with first gen students you're talking about, right?
First year and first gen, so
Oh,
same.
first year. Okay, first year. So first year was a little interesting because they had to move in 2 weeks early. They either had to quarantine someplace safe. New York has some of the most um, careful, because I won't call them rigid, but careful policies and protocols around COVID in the country. And so we had very low rates. So people coming into the state was a concern because, we kept our rates pretty low. So students had to quarantine for a couple of weeks. So we created this system of pods where people would just check in on them while we were waiting to begin the semester. We also, still had some like a virtual convocation. We were trying as much as possible to connect first years. I think they were frustrated, but I also think that they understood that these were precarious times, and that nobody had ever seen this before. So we didn't have a road map for this. And so I think our first years fared well. I think our first gens also, we put a lot of things in place because of what was happening. So we were always having communications about needing assistance, or how to get things taken care of virtually. So I think we were also more communicative with students than we had been in the past, which is something that's really important for first gens, because there's always this assumption that, people go to college and actually know what it means to do college, what it means to register for classes, what it means to purchase books. And so we were very communicative, and I think that also helped to make a difference for first gen students as well.
Yeah, I completely understand the whole first gen experience. I am a first gen traditional student. My dad was in college while we were in school, but also as my full time job, part of most of our work is done with first generation college students and helping them continue and persist in the college. So I definitely understand. It's great that you guys were able to recognize that and put those procedures in place to help them. I kind of want to go back to the spring semester of last year. This is your second year, correct, at this
Well,
school?
yes, this will be my first full year. So yes, I started in the spring.
So last year, in your first semester, you got hit with the pandemic in the middle of the semester. How did you react? What were some things, like you didn't even have the knowledge of like early experience of doing some of those things yet to know how to flip them virtual. So how did you react when you guys went completely, I imagine, went virtual in the spring?
I was a little nervous. It's an extremely large portfolio. We have almost 300 student organizations. We have over 20 fraternities and sororities. We have 2 student centers. One is offline because it's being renovated and it opens this semester. So we had a lot going on. We literally had to pivot everything to remote and virtual, and I had no idea what exactly that would look like or mean. And that included all of our meetings, all of our programs. Even senior week was virtual. We had to send out thousands of senior packages at the last, like we just decided we can't just let them graduate without recognizing them. So we put together these packages with t-shirts and paraphernalia, and we still had a senior week. It was a lot. It was a lot. I literally was there about a month and a couple of weeks when we ended up shutting down. And so I didn't know anybody. I'm not from the area. So I really had to navigate my own psychological and personal well-being, as well as helping staff adjust to this virtual experience and these changes that were taking place.
Just sounds like a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot with extra cheese. It was a lot.
I imagine at your school that senior week is a huge deal. So to then lose that, and yeah, those students are probably very appreciative.
Traumatized. They were traumatized, and high school students were traumatized. They were nervous about coming to school in the fall. What would that look like? But our seniors took it in stride. They were distraught, but they're also blossoming adults, so they know that life happens, and none of this was anybody's fault. None of this was something that just the institution experienced. The whole world was experiencing this pandemic. So that was the positive to it, is that it wasn't like it was some kind of structural or institutional decision. We really had no choice. No one had any choice in how to handle. Well, we had choices, but everybody had to make adjustments across the country. So it wasn't like we were the only university in the country that had to make these adjustments. So I think that was some level of relief for us institutionally, and then students as well, knowing that their friends and loved ones across the country were experiencing the same thing.
Got you. And how did y'all make the decision to bring students back to campus in the fall?
Oh, that was a decision that we had been talking about since the spring. And ultimately the bottom line was, it was up to the governor, and it was up to the state. It was up to our county health department. It was a lot of people involved in that decision. But because of our low cases, and because we had started working on protocols all summer long. We even had a COVID symposium that I had put together for staff to help prepare for the fall, restructuring spaces and putting together new guidelines for programs, events, and activities. So we did a lot over the summer. But the ultimate decision was, we wanted to make this as much of a post-secondary experience as possible. So we opened our doors, and we didn't know how many people were going to show up. We were like, well, is anybody going to come? We just didn't know. And so to get like almost 80% of our students back on campus was phenomenal. And we still stayed below 5% as far as any kind of cases. It wasn't until the end of the semester that we rose above the level of being, having to go remote. So we did an excellent job, and students did a really good job wearing masks and keeping social distance. I mean, we had a couple of snafus, but for the most part, for 15, 16,000 people to just cooperate was amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that is a great testament to the work that y'all did. What were some of the protocols that y'all put in for events or for dormitories? Like, what were some things y'all had to implement?
So we had to restructure spaces. So we had to remove chairs. We had to put X's on floors. We had to put signage to change directions. So people are going in one way and leaving another. It looked like a circus for for the first several weeks on campus, because we ended up renting these huge tents. We had classrooms inside of tents. We had portables with little trailers as well, so that we would have more space to densify for our classes and for our co-curricular experiences. We ended up getting lights outside. I mean, we had to make a lot of adjustments. And in the middle of that, our stadium was closed because that was under renovation. And so, we had a lot going on, and the larger spaces, two large spaces were offline. So we had to really figure it out. So we did from, s'mores with fire pits late at night to trying to virtually watch games for residence halls on members on floors watching games. We really tried to make it as, I guess, normal as possible. But we did rely on outdoor space, which is going to be a little different this semester, of course, because we're in New York, we're in upstate New York, and it's cold. So, how many activities and events are we going to be able to do? But we're going to figure it out. We're going to make it work.
Gotcha. And the library, is that still available to students to use for computer
Yes, the
access?
library was still open. It was de-densified, and there was a protocol, students having to swipe in, and that was also for contact tracing. So some of the things we did, we had students swiping in, so we'd be able to contact trace in case something happened. We also had a lot of testing that took place on campus. We had a testing site that was just set up every day. People could just go in and get tested if they needed to. We had isolation buildings, students that were tested positive for COVID. We had a residence hall that was offline that was strictly for isolation. We had a quarantine protocol where students had to stay on their floors. We had to have food delivered to them 3 meals a day. So yeah, it was a lot, but we put a lot of things in place to protect the community.
Seems like y'all had it together. That's what it sounds like. Like y'all did an amazing.
I mean, I don't usually like to brag, but like we really did it. Like I was shocked because people were like, "Oh, are we gonna last?" We were thinking, "Oh, October 1, we're shutting down," and so we ended up shutting down a week early. Which, when you think about a week early, right before Thanksgiving, that's not a bad deal. And so we did a good job, and I think this university came together well.
Nice. So I want to ask, we are on a highlight reel kind of right now, but what was a bright moment for you? Like, what was a highlight moment for you this semester?
I think the highlight moment for me was a student leadership retreat we had. A lot of our students were, sad that a lot of experiences weren't, in person. A lot of them were virtual, but we actually had an opportunity to do a student leadership retreat that was in person. And I think students really, it was like an aha moment for a lot of students. I don't think overall we do a good job with transparency in higher education, helping students understand how systems work and how the institution is structured. So we put together a retreat that, the head of admissions came in, vice president for enrollment came in and shared about, financial aid packages and broke down the demographics of populations. We had academic affairs come in and talk about our first year seminar course and how courses get approved. We had people come in and talk about diversity. So we really wanted to educate our students. So when they decide they want to share a concern, at least they have a better understanding and context of how the system works versus I just want it this way because I want it this way. And so they really, really appreciated that. And we have a student advisory committee as well that meets every other week. And that consists of some of the members of that leadership retreat. So we're in constant conversation. So I like being able to be open, and that. I mean, I'm no sugar, no cream. So I'm the same. I'm still the same person. So I like to be able to give people the information as succinct and as factual as possible.
Nice. I mean, it definitely helps for students to know how things are working instead of just throwing ideas out. I mean, you can throw ideas out there, but once you know how things are working, like, okay, this idea
Yeah.
won't work because X, Y, Z. Now I know how to pitch an idea that will be more possible to come to fruition. On the opposite side, what was the biggest challenge you had this semester?
Oh, um, last semester or this past
Either
semester?
or pandemic time. What was
I
the
mean, I think, so literally, I was week 3, day 1, a protest broke out. So yeah, that probably was one of the most stressful moments in my professional career ever. That was something that was, it was unexpected in the way in which it played itself out. But I was clear that, students have been protesting all over the country, from, social justice concerns with like what's happening around the country and around the world to what's happening institutionally and where challenges are institutionally. And so that, being a newbie, protest breaks out, a month later, pandemic breaks out. I mean, I think, and I literally was in my own space by myself from March until probably about June, July. So that was probably the lowest moment last year.
So that actually led to my next question. Because of all the resurgence of Black Lives Matter and police focus on police brutality, because of everything that was happening in the country with the killings of Black people, how were you able to navigate that? Did you have to have conversations with colleagues, with students, with community, and how did that go for you?
Shane, you know me, right? So I was pulling no punches. I had it. Like at that, like I think I had an epiphany 2.0 about what it means to be Black in this world, not just this country, but this world. So I was giving them the business, and I'm gonna keep giving them the business. You know, there is a lot of conversation around anti-racism, which is garbage. There's no such thing as anti-racism to me. There's anti-Blackness that no one wants to talk about. And so I've been really pushing to have conversations around anti-Blackness and what that looks like. And I can't help myself. I just say what's on my mind. So, I pretty much told them, the bottom line is no one in this world wants to be Black. Black is the antithesis of everything that is negative socially. People really, white supremacy has really done a number on Black bodies in this country and globally. And I challenge anybody to say that, oh, people love being Black. Yeah, you love being Black because you're Black and you have no choice and you learn how to make those adjustments. But no one wants to be born into a world where you're considered, as Du Bois says, is the problem. So for me, I gloves off. Like that's non-negotiable for me. My humanity is not up for debate. It's not up for negotiation. That has been probably the biggest lesson that I've learned, is that you have to be honest with white people. You have to be honest with other people too, not just white people, but people of color, about what it means to be Black, and be unapologetic about it, because we have been stepped over, and we have been co-opted, and we have been circumvented in so many social justice struggles. And it still shows up that until we reconcile what has happened to the enslaved Africans in this country, until we reconcile how that has impacted generations and generations of people that look like us, nobody's going to be free. If I'm not free, nobody's free. And so that's what I've been sharing with my colleagues. That's what I've been sharing with students. And when possible, let's talk about equity, and let's talk about equity, but let's also talk about this anti-Blackness that no one wants to address.
Nice. I mean, you hit it right on the head. Nobody wants to be Black, if we're being really real about it. And so, how have those conversations been received?
I think they've been received well. The thing that I like about living in the Northeast again versus living in the South is that, the Northeast, people don't pull punches the same. I mean, it's like people aren't walking on eggshells like they were in the South. Like everything was clutch the pearls. Every time I approached the subject, Black people were skeevy about it. White people were nervous about it. But here, even if there's some level of anxiety around it, even if people are nervous, they put on their, big draws and deal with it. Like there is no, I'm not letting you off the hook because you white and you crying. Like dry your tears and we're gonna finish this conversation. Like we're not doing that. And it's this, and I can respect that versus the civility that sometimes the South tends to portray, but it's laced with so much violence, and it's laced with so much hostility, and it's laced with so much resistance. And not that it doesn't exist, because there's no place in the world that's not struggling with racism. Let's just be clear, but it's just different. I can cuss. I can tell you how I feel, and you'll get over it. I mean, it's not anything shocking. So
I feel like the Northeast has like a boldness to it. Like people in the Northeast are bold, and in the South, it's kind of like hands off. Yeah, I never thought about that until you just said it. Like, yeah, there is just a different, And then the West Coast is just everybody's just like chill.
Whatever. Yeah, I love the West Coast. And let's be like, I went to LA. I fell in love with LA. Like I love LA. I would have to be rich to live in LA, but I loved LA. It is a different vibe, but yeah, it is a boldness here. And I think it's tied to the fact that, Washington, DC is right up the street. That politics is very different here. There seems to be a more of a coordinated effort. Well, I think the reality is that these were the Union states. They were really union. There was a uniting of these states. And I really do think that the South still deals with having a secessionist mentality. That it still wants to, every state wants to be its own little country with its own little set of rules, with its own little ways of managing and handling its citizens. And it's very different than the Northeast. And yes, there are pockets of the Northeast that are extremely racist. The Klan has a large following in the Northeast, especially Pennsylvania. But it's just different. I don't feel I'm not as afraid for my life like I was in the South. I really after this president's about to go, after he got in office, there really was this like tangible fear that I had for my life and for my safety.
I can say I definitely didn't have the experience because I was gone from the South by that time. Like even after college, I was there for a year, and I left before he got elected, and that was I can't imagine what the atmosphere was like down there at
It
that.
was horrible. It was horrible. It was like a time of mourning. It was just like it was bad. It was really bad.
And you mentioned like the South has this secessionary mindset. I don't know if I said that word right.
Hmm.
I think just look at, and every state wants to rule in its own way. Just think about how the pandemic has been handled in the South. Like you have
I
Florida.
mean, look at these clowns that are literally about to fight the electoral college.
That too.
Where are they from? Most of them are from the South.
This is gonna happen multiple times. It'll be fine.
Okay.
I was going to say it before the interview. I was like, dang, I was going to say it before this happens. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is a different mess that is happening. Hopefully, just need Georgia. Please do what you need to do. Come on, you got too
In
much.
Jesus' name, yes.
Wow. And then on a different note, you were working with college students and first generation college students and financial aid and all that type of stuff. Did you have experiences where students were going through financial hardship, and was your department able to help those students?
So we did more co-curricular things, but the institution, so my area, our division is enrollment and student life, so which is really unique. So I had the opportunity to learn a lot more about the enrollment side, and under enrollment is financial aid. So as soon as the pandemic occurred, we actually, that's not true. Yeah, we created a food pantry in one of our near one of our student unions. We created a new one so that people would have access to it over the summer, because we did have a decent number of students that were still here. So we created a food pantry. We were literally giving out money, like from plane tickets to moving expenses to helping families take care of bills. uh, you know, Anything that a student needed, we were really trying to help to mitigate any of the challenges that they were facing during this pandemic. We also had set up, sessions over the summer where students could just check in virtually if they just wanted to share how they're doing, how they're feeling, so they wouldn't feel so isolated being at home, because everybody doesn't get to go home to a mommy and daddy in a wonderful home with a secure space to study or to just be themselves. Some people figure out who they are in college, and so when they go back home, they're an enigma to their family. They don't understand them. They're not legible. They don't know who they are anymore. And so we understood that kind of quick pivot back home for some students was painful and an adjustment. So we also allowed students, if they wanted to stay here on campus, they could stay here. So our campus was open. We didn't force anybody to go home who didn't want to go home.
I feel like y'all are just like the anomaly that was not heard of during this time. Because especially from my position where I work, we're like dealing with things like having to be pushed off campus and can I get my refund for my housing if I'm not paying, like I'm paying for this, but I'm not getting this and all kinds of stuff. So I feel like what you're telling me about your university is just amazing.
Yeah, and we had to refund students for housing. So we've experienced a lot of budgetary crisis because of that, but it was the right thing to do. And we're still facing, some budgetary constraints because it's been very expensive, between testing and, reinventing spaces and having to PPE in and of itself is expensive. Every student got a package with a mask and hand sanitizer. I mean, you can't bring people back and expect them to wear a mask and you don't provide it. So those are things that's equity. That's what equity looks like. So, as much as possible, we were trying to think about how do we make everybody feel comfortable on this campus, regardless of their demographics. And so I think as much as we could, we did a good job with that.
Nice. And I kind of want to switch over to technology. Granted, y'all weren't like y'all in person now. Y'all somewhat virtual in March, April, May. God, I keep doing that. What was the technology that you guys were using to keep people engaged? If you have any.
So yeah, so we did a lot. We did a lot through Zoom. We used Instagram. We used Teams, MS Teams, which is phenomenal. And we had a lot of meetings, but students were just kind of getting zoomed out. I mean, we did paint and sees that were virtual. We had movie nights. We did grocery bingo. I mean, anything you can think of that we would do in person, we actually did online, and students did participate. We had almost 8,000 students participate in virtual and in-person programs last year, which, that's a decent number. And it definitely was down from what we do in person, because we can have a program in person and get 3 or 4,000 people. But, just to have people to log in and to participate virtually was amazing. So we had all kinds of programs and opportunities.
Nice. And how does a virtual movie night work? Because
Just like, just selecting a movie and everybody watches the same movie. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. But there are some programs now that allow people to watch the movies together. Like half the screen is the guest, and then the other part of the screen is a television show or whatever. So we're going to probably explore that for the spring semester and see how we can take advantage of that as well.
and grocery bingo.
Yeah, so just having, I don't know how they played it, but I mean it kind of was just like a bingo, and then they would get money towards groceries, or like, a gift card, or what, not a gift card, but certificate towards groceries or whatever. So yeah.
Cool. And for you and the other, I guess, staff of the school, faculty and staff of the school, was there a way for you guys to stay connected virtually that you guys were using, or it's kind
Oh
of
yeah, we were Zoom meetings. Everything was Zoom and Teams.
okay? And so let's talk about the future. What are your hopes for the spring semester?
Um, I hope that I get to meet more students. I mean, this is really I really feel like a fish out of water, because I don't know a lot of students. And for me not to have connected and found a tribe of students is really challenging for me. But I came in such a precarious time. It was difficult to really build relationships. And it still has been difficult. So hopefully I'll get a chance to meet and connect with more students. And that's what I'm looking forward to, and being more creative and providing opportunities and experiences for students as well.
Got you. And as for your career, I know you're in you haven't even completed a year yet, but you are the associate. Let me make sure I get this title right. Associate Vice President of Student Experiences. What is your career aspirations, and has the pandemic kind of helped you figure out where you want to finish, or has it like everything still the same?
I'm not sure. I'm exploring that as we speak. I'm not really sure what I want to do next. So I'm one of those people, until I figure out, I'm gonna stay put. So I'm right now. I mean, I have a very supportive supervisor. I work with an amazing set of directors. So I'm good. I'm good in that sense. It's just figuring out what's next. I have some bucket list things I love to do, like write comedy for Saturday Night Live and stuff like that. But like I don't know when that'll happen. I believe it will, but I don't know when. But like I just always want to stay in education. I always want to be able to share knowledge. And so whatever capacity I can do that is what I embrace.
Nice. Well, Saturday Night Live, you better be on the lookout because Meredith is coming. We don't know when yet, but she's coming. And on your personal side, how has COVID impacted your family?
Um, well, I've had like my nephew, my niece, my sister, they had COVID. Um, my niece and my sister didn't even know it was COVID. They had it before it was like people even knew what it was, but they were really, really sick. And they tested and the antibodies were in the system. My nephew had, I was very afraid for him. Um, he's a Black male in this country. He has asthma. So I was terrified for his life. I've gone to some virtual funerals this summer. Um, it really has been a year of loss. It was a year of loss. And the thing about COVID is we still don't know like the long-term effects that it has on people's bodies. And so we don't know what COVID's going to mean. I mean, I think there's going to be some residuals that we're not expecting from it that we need to prepare ourselves for. But I do think it brought our family closer together.
That's a good silver lining for an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were thrust into pandemic work a month into your new job. You're still in pandemic work at the moment. What are you doing to support your mental health during this time?
Child, good copay for a therapist. Honey, that copay, I'm telling you, like, I'm like, you earned your copay today. I encourage anybody, therapy. It helps, it works. If you need medication, pop it with some water. It works. I just think, but I also think that there's a level of clarity that that COVID has brought and the pandemic has brought because people really had to be in their own spaces and sit with themselves in a way that we haven't had to probably in decades, a generation at least, having to really learn more about themselves. And so I think while the environment got a little cleaner and the air got a little cleaner and the water got a little cleaner and the lakes and stuff, I think some of our heads got a little cleaner and our hearts got a little clearer. And so I think people um, really started to think about at the end of the day what really matters. And so that's what I've been thinking a lot about. What really matters, fighting demons that I put behind me, fighting them, face to face and dealing with them. It's been a very interesting time, and I think that mentally and emotionally and spiritually, I've grown a lot.
I'm glad you've gotten to have that growth in this time. Those are all my questions that I have, but I do have some Instagram submitted questions and some fun short answer questions.
Sure.
I'll jump into those. The first Instagram question is, are you okay?
Are we ever okay? No, I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay. Whatever okay means, I'm okay.
Okay. How has the pandemic widened the opportunity gap at your school?
Um, I think it forced us to think about the things that we require of students and what they need. And so, like, an example is we had to send students home with computers, with laptops. We just, how do you go virtual and just assume everybody has a laptop and they're able to go home and have that? So, so we were able to, you know, deal with the technology gap that I think that we've taken for granted for a long time. And so that for me was helping to expand opportunity. I think everybody now knows how to use technology in a way that we didn't know how to use before. So I think those kinds of opportunities were made available because we were forced into this situation.
Was there any other technology that students were sent home with?
I think just pretty much laptops and cameras and things like that.
Um, How can individuals help education? Like myself, like somebody down the street, how can we help education in this time?
I think regardless of whatever your political decisions are around education and what you decide to do for your children and what you decide to do in your city or your local municipality, I think everybody needs to pay attention to what's happening in public education. Whether you put your children in private school, whether you homeschool, you still need to be invested in what's happening in your cities and your local counties. And that's what I think we ought to be doing. We ought to be trying to figure out what's going on in our public education because there are a lot of children that still need public education, and it needs to be fair. It needs to be something that can prepare them for their future. And so I think everybody has a responsibility in their local area to hold people accountable for public education, whether you participate in it or not.
Got it. Um, what is something that you had to do virtually that you will use going forward with in-person activities?
Um, I think we're still going to end up having virtual meetings, and I think we'll still have some virtual programs. So the other thing is, like I mentioned, some of our students were studying in other parts of the world, and so I think the virtual experience will be a way to connect with our students who may be studying abroad, may be lonely. That may be a way for us to check in and connect with them. They can still feel like they have a sense of the institutional spirit by being a part of virtual programs. So we're going to always provide some type of virtual as much as we can experience for students as well as in person.
Nice. Um, what have been the best tools you've used to support virtual learning?
Hmm, that's a good question. I really haven't used a lot of different tools. I mean, MS Teams has everything from project management to the ability to share screens. I'm not a tech person, so I just kind of went with the flow. I do think that all of these platforms have the ability to educate. I know I think we use Blackboard as well at the institution. So I mean, I think using these Zoom and MS Teams, I think they have a lot of educational lenses to them that people should take advantage of.
Okay. Um, you might have liked this question, but has your school provided resources for anti-racism courses or curriculum?
No.
Okay. Um, have you needed to relocate from your home to virtually work in a lower cost geography?
Say that again.
Have you needed to relocate to work in a lower cost geography?
How did I?
Have you needed to relocate to work in a lower
No,
cost?
I haven't. Mm-mm.
Um, have you did you go to the office on the regular or did you work from home?
I worked from home mostly, but a couple of days a week I would go in for a few hours.
And so have your expenses gone up due to working from home?
Have my expenses gone up?
Mhm.
Probably shopping. But no, I mean, for the most part, no, my expenses haven't gone up much.
Okay. Do you feel that your health was disregarded at any point?
I feel like my health was disregarded at any point. Um, I think that if we had to do it over again, I think that we probably need to put gaps between meetings because I think we took for granted that because we didn't have to physically go from one place to another place, there would be moments this year or last year rather that I would be in meetings from 8 o'clock until like 7 o'clock in the evening, like nonstop. And I think that we don't think about the breaks that we may need, even though it is virtual. So I think that was stressful. And then just all of the looking through the screen, that definitely is, I'm sure it's affected my vision somewhat. And posture as well, because looking down all the time instead of being able to move around and look straight forward has been somewhat of a challenge as well.
Okay. What has been the upside of online work that couldn't have happened in a normal setting?
I think online has the ability for more people to participate. I think that that's a good thing. I think that when it's virtual and you have a platform that has, I don't want to say unlimited, but tens of thousands of people able to participate, that's definitely an advantage over using a space where there's a limited capacity.
Gotcha. All right, so now on to the short answer questions that can be answered in a few words or one word. It's completely up to you.
Okay.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Literature.
Your favorite dish to cook?
Making it today. Buffalo egg rolls.
Hmm.
Buffalo
Your,
chicken egg rolls. Yep.
your favorite restaurant in your area?
It's a Thai restaurant.
If you weren't doing what you're doing professionally, what would you be doing?
Probably a lawyer.
Best gift you've ever given or received?
Um, I gave someone a cherry blossom tree in honor of their mother.
Wow.
Best gift I've ever received. Um, hmm, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Goodness. It's gonna sound silly. A portable ice maker.
Okay. If you could only eat one vegetable for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One vegetable. Probably broccoli.
Is a potato a vegetable or not?
No,
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
absolutely not.
What's the most extreme thing you've ever done?
Um, oh, a 2 mile journey through the jungle in Ghana.
Okay. How was that experience? Now I'm just interested.
Oh my God. Yeah, like I didn't realize until I got down there. They're like, oh, look at this big giant print. Oh, this is the elephant print. I'm like, okay. Oh, we're passing a lion's den. Okay. All right. When can we get back out here? Yeah, we were deep in the jungle, like near the lion's den. I was standing, I have a picture where I'm literally standing in front of an elephant, is right behind me. And it was a man with just a raggedy rifle walking us around. So I think that was the most extreme thing I've done, next to probably holding the tail of a crocodile and and swimming in a shark tank.
I ain't doing none of that. Not even you can't give me the go. If you live by any mantras, what are some mantras you live by, or one mantra you live by?
No can be your last answer to me. It can never be your first.
Hmm. Okay. What do you believe you spend too much money on?
Um, Probably restaurants.
How would your best friends describe you in one word?
Honest.
If you could recommend a book, a podcast, a TV series, or a movie, what would it be? You can answer one or you can answer all four.
Okay, book. Uh, Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Um, hmm. Let's just stick to that. Let's just stick to the book.
What is your favorite movie?
Love and Basketball.
Best vacation you've ever taken?
Huh. Aruba.
Okay. What is important for those who do not know you personally to know about you?
Um, I'm extremely sensitive.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to share before we conclude this interview?
I just want to remind people that, when working in higher education, that we are educators. We're not just administrators, and that we are intellectuals as well.
Got it. Do you want people to follow you on social media? If so, you can drop your name. If not, we'll just delete this part later.
Sure. At Dr. Meredith Davis is, I think, yes, my Instagram. At Diversity Dropout One is my Twitter. And look out for my podcast. I'll be, launching a podcast sometime in February.
Nice. Do you have a title?
It'll be Dr. Meredith Davis.
Okay, so look out for the podcast. It will be available in February. Dr. Meredith Davis, thank you for joining me for this interview. I appreciate everything you've told us about the university you work at, university that you work at, and thank you for being kind of a hero for the students that you work for. That providing these resources to keep them on campus, using your experiences as a college student to keep other students on college and moving forward towards their goals. I think that is huge, and I feel like you're in a space when you're not in a classroom, but more in the student affairs administrative part as an educator, that you're able to reach students in a different way that will help them have life lessons that will follow them throughout life. So I want to say thank you for that, and thank you for sitting down for this interview.
Always a pleasure to see you, Shane.
Likewise.
Take care.
You too. Bye.